Hi folks, so I am ready to do the weekly video. Sorry, I just got out of the shower and so I do not have hair and makeup experts at my disposal, so I look the way I look and that's fine. And also I'm doing this around dusk, so at some point I'm going to turn on the lamp and we're going to have to deal with the ugly lighting. And those of you who watch my channel know that the lighting is indeed ugly when I have to turn it on. But until then, let me see if I can get through this week's overview, which is actually, as far as weeks go, relatively sedate. But it's just that the content and the amount of content is sedate. As we know, we are between eclipses, so it's not as if the time is necessarily sedate. Now, it is the week after the full moon, and those of you who watch my videos know that the week after the full moon I consider the most balanced to get things done. We're not dealing with the mounting intensity and busyness and craziness potentially that we would deal with as we headed to the full moon lunar eclipse. Last night. I mean, we really are, it isn't even 24 hours since the eclipse, right? So as I'm posting this. So as we, certainly things can be busier and more hectic and we can be getting a lot done as we head towards the full moon, but the energies are unwieldy. It can be extraordinarily busy. As I like to say, the pot of milk comes to a boil. The week after the full moon, I find energetically is the most balanced with regard to getting things done and getting things off your to-do list. So by all means, use this week to do that to the best of your ability. And also know that you are coming off of a full moon lunar eclipse, and at least for about 48 hours after the eclipse, the moon is still going to be in Libra. So eclipse releases will still be occurring. And I've done a video on the full moon lunar eclipse last week, so you can look to that for more details related to this eclipse. So when I talk about it being an eclipse of release and releasing things, what does that mean essentially? And what is it that we could be releasing? And I would say that if you have some clarity around that, by all means, go ahead and do so. This particular full moon lunar eclipse that we're coming off of is directly in conversation with the solar eclipse on April the 8th. They are corresponding full moon yesterday and then a new moon solar eclipse on April the 8th. Once we have the two Capricorn full moons in June and July, we're going to have a more what we might perceive as a more normal cycle where we have a new moon and then 2 weeks later a corresponding full moon in the opposite sign. Right now, the full moons in the opposite sign are happening before the new moon. So things come to a head as we approach the full moon, and then whatever drama, and full moons are not always negative or challenging, opportunity, whatever it is that's coming up at that point in time, the corresponding new moon 2 weeks later kind of provides us a gate or a direction to move forward in. And since that is an eclipse, it's an eclipse conjuncting Chiron in the sign of Aries. There's really something with that April 8th eclipse that we get to move forward on in a direction that the universe or spirit or God or whatever your word is for whatever this organizing entity is, it's a direction where we're asked to lean into and develop our sort of proverbial muscles in that direction. That's where the growth is. That's where the carrot at the end of the stick is. That's where the that's sort of where the pull is, for lack of a better way of putting it. Okay. The reason why I'm a little distracted talking about that eclipse is it's still 2 weeks out. And this is meant to be a weekly overview. The only thing that is relevant for this week is what happens on April the 1st, which is that Mercury goes retrograde in Aries. As I was doing this particular weekly overview, I realized that a lot of what I want to say has been covered in the past few videos. It's just that kind of week. Some weeks you have a lot of aspects, and some weeks like this one, I'm just looking, we have the full moon lunar eclipse on the 25th, midnight earlier today, and Pacific time. And the next thing that happens is on 4/1, which is Mercury goes retrograde in Aries. Now on 4/3, Venus conjuncts Neptune in Pisces. And I'm thinking in 2 or 3 days' time, I've mentioned to you that in the sign of Pisces, there's been some sort of a crisis brewing since 2014, 15, 16, and Saturn's presence since March 2023 is asking us to, is revealing things to us where clarity has been lacking, but is also asking us to stabilize that part of the chart. And now that we're getting to Venus conjuncting Neptune as we head to the 3rd of April, I think that by the middle of this week, certainly by Thursday or Friday, I'm going to put out a video that talks more about, and some of you have requested this, about what was going on in 2014, 15, 16 astrologically that leads me to say what I do, and how should we interpret with Venus conjuncting Neptune. And the remaining transits in Pisces will be Mars conjuncting Saturn and then Neptune during the month of April. And we are still till April 8th in the Pisces new moon cycle. Right? So we're still in the month of Pisces in the way that I define a month, the word being derived from the moon. The last new moon that we had was in Pisces. The next new moon we will have will be on April the 8th in Aries. So until then, we're still being asked to manage, execute on, consider. Most of the planets at this point in time are transiting Pisces, Aries, or Taurus. Pluto remains in Aquarius and is an important presence there, especially when we consider that this full moon lunar eclipse that we had last night trined Pluto. Again, more on the full moon lunar eclipse in the full moon lunar eclipse video, which I will put a link to at the end of this video once I'm done processing it, and also more on the upcoming, and this is important. I have already done a video on Mercury retrograde, and I'll put a link to that as well. Consider that at the end of this week, April 1st, and so by March 27th, 28th, we'll really start to feel the Mercury retrograde energy. And we will really start to feel in a mundane manner. And as many of you have probably observed, often it is the days when Mercury is going retrograde and direct. In this case, April 1st and April 25th, when Mercury is stationary, when it is not based on our viewpoint, not moving at all. When it is stationary in the sky, just getting ready to go retrograde, or just getting ready to go direct. That is when we most see Mercury-related snafus, not only miscommunications and misunderstandings, but also technical snafus, and delays and meeting snafus and technology snafus and travel snafus and bags being lost and showing up at the airport at 6:35 a.m. when it says 6:35 p.m. and not seeing things properly. And the mental communication and transaction planet, the messenger planet, is not moving. And then it starts to move backwards. As I mentioned in my Mercury retrograde video, another thing to look out for during this Mercury-related cycle, but for some of us really to look out for as we head towards April the 1st, and then around April the 25th, and to a lesser extent around April the 11th, one of the things to look out for is, what does the Mercury retrograde reveal to us that has been in our blind spot that is going to affect how it is that we're going to move forward? For people with Leo and Aquarius rising to some extent, because Mercury-related signs are in your financial houses, look for finances to potentially slow down. So be a little careful of that if you're a Leo rising or a Virgo rising, or if you're a Taurus rising because you've got Gemini in the 2nd, or you're a Scorpio rising because you're going to have Gemini in your 8th. Watch those Mercury-ruled houses. Sometimes the finances can start flowing, but often we find financial slowdowns. So just be warned if you're one of those 4 rising signs to kind of keep an eye out on financial slowdowns, or a retrograde Mercury impacting your cash flow. It's always intriguing to see how it is that cash flow is going to be going to be affected. Now, with this Mercury retrograde and with the new moon solar eclipse in Aries on April the 8th, the planet, I'm going to use that word, that is most involved is Chiron in Aries. The only planet that the retrograde Mercury is aspecting as it transits roughly 15 to 27, 28 degrees of Aries 3 times is Chiron. And Mercury conjuncted Chiron on March the 20th, 5 days ago. And the next two conjunctions that Mercury is going to make with Chiron will be close to the end of the retrograde, because Chiron is hovering somewhere in that 16, 17 degree area. So as Mercury goes retrograde and closer to April 25th, heads towards that 15 odd degree, 16 odd degree mark, it's going to conjunct Chiron pretty rapidly between close to the end of Mercury retrograde and shortly after. So the potential for profound healing in the Aries part of our chart. And even more importantly, as I said, I think it was in my last video when I was looking at Mercury retrograde, rather than using the word healing, I was going to use the phrase coming back to yourself, to your unsullied self that no longer is impacted by that kind of big primordial primal wound that we are carrying in the Aries part of the chart. And when I say things like Aries part of the chart, Pisces part of the chart, again, for people who are new to my channel, I'm talking about the house occupied by the sign of Pisces or Aries in your chart. I use the whole sign system, WHOLE. I used the Western tropical zodiac and not sort of the sidereal zodiac. So just if that means anything to anybody, I'm talking about whole signs. But if you're used to you looking at your chart a certain way, by all means, look at the houses impacted by Pisces, because it will be plural likely if you're using something like Placidus as a house system, or Aries, and it'll give you a sense of the areas that I am talking about. So as this week occurs, focus on productivity and getting things off your to-do list. Understand that you will be in the process of releasing whatever it is that the full moon lunar eclipse in Libra has been asking you to release. And the key dates or milestones for that would be October 14th of 2023, December 14th of 2023, January 24th of 2024, and of course, March 24th, 25th of 2024, the week before, week after. Things will build and there'll be clarity about what it is that you need to let go. Now, there is, I think, hold on one second. I want to confirm this for you. So just bear with me. Whatever this release is, when we were talking about these eclipses of release, when we were doing the lunar eclipse video, I think I confirmed to you that there's one more Libra eclipse coming up, and that is later this year. One more Libra solar eclipse. So this process of releasing something in the Libra part of the chart continues till the end of this year. And I'm going to confirm for you in a second. I'm going to confirm for you what that date is, as long as whatever it is that I'm trying to open opens up. Here we go. Give me 1 second. 2024, October 2nd. So later this year, October 2nd, the week before, week after, December 2nd, the week before, week after, might also have further developments of what it is that needs to be released in the Libra part of the chart. And as I said, releasing something in the Libra part of the chart, leaning into the Aries part of the chart go hand in hand. So it wouldn't surprise me if during some of the dates that I mentioned, there was a pull into the Aries part of the chart, requiring the release in the Libra part of the chart. That's the release in the Libra part of the chart that allows you to move into the Aries part of the chart. The nodes, the eclipses work hand in hand. So we're coming, the moon is still in Libra, and we're coming off of the eclipse. So we may still be doing some eclipse shedding, some full moon kvetching, tantruming. We may still be basking in the visibility that the full moon may have brought us in the Libra part of the chart. All sorts of full moony things we might still be dealing with, and again, more details on the full moon Libra eclipse and what I'm talking about in the full moon Libra eclipse video. I don't want to do such lengthy videos all the time that I'm repeating content over and over again. And when it comes to the Mercury retrograde that is coming up, that's the big headline for this week, past Tuesday, Wednesday. Remember, let me remind you of the overall timeline, and then we'll be done with this video. As I mentioned to you, there's a direction that you may have been wanting to go in July, August of last year, 2023, or the second half of 2023, and may have felt thwarted from being able to do so until the middle of February. The middle of February opened the gates, but moving towards that change, there may be a recognition that the change being considered is bigger and more complex. And now that the gates are open, practicalities and the reality of moving towards that change needs to be accounted for. Also, whatever destination that may have seemed attractive may need to be revised. We are in a different place in February than we were in July. So is it really that's where we want to go? Do we want to stay? Do we want a combination of both? What is our end game? What is our vision? And again, I'm reminded of another video I did previously about the end game. So you can look at that if some of this is interesting to you. I know there's a lot of referring you to previous videos, but we are in now the middle of a period that I have been talking about for a while and that others have been talking about for a while, which is we're in the middle of the eclipses. We're in the middle of this vortex that is not just the eclipses, but also the upcoming Mercury retrograde. And we're waiting till the end of April into early May to get spat out of this particular cycle to really understand and see what it is that we're going to be doing, where it is that we're headed, and what things need to look like. For those of you who have Mercury and that means the destination, that means my hope is that by the beginning of May, we will feel like even whatever our timeline is towards moving in the direction or not moving the direction, it will feel more like a choice and more like a decision, as opposed to right now when it's just like, I don't know, do I still want this or that? And I don't know, how am I going to get there? And the eclipses and Mercury retrograde will help us through that decision-making process as God, as Spirit, takes the wheel during the eclipses, and as Mercury retrograde brings to attention whatever it is that is in our blind spot. That is going to, however disappointing that might be, and sometimes it is, that is going to allow us to determine what is going to remain as a viable path and what we may need to release. Because we've learned something about it that makes us realize that whatever it was that we are now releasing, that we learned something about, that does not make it a viable path, we've gotten from that experience what we need to get, and it's no longer necessarily part of our future. We're going to let Mercury retrograde. If you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, all the standard things about Mercury retrograde apply. You know, as we head past March the 27th, 28th, be careful of making commitments. If you have to make commitments, check the details thoroughly, multiple times. Make sure everything that you agreed to is accurately reflected in the contracts that you may be signing, and understand that whatever it is that you sign or commit to while Mercury is retrograde may be shorter lived in the way that it is presented to you and might change after Mercury goes direct. Just understand that. And that doesn't mean that things that are shorter lived don't have value. They could still bring you visibility, they could still be useful, they could still be fruitful, they could still serve a purpose. And sometimes the project itself may unfold the way it needs to. People may just not be planning and thinking things through as thoroughly or as accurately as they should. For those of for those of you who have Mercury direct, to continue that in your birth chart, it is likely going to be the end of April, early May, that Taurus new moon on May 6th, that's going to feel like, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to go about it. What I'm staying, what I'm moving towards what I want, what I'm clear about what it is that I want. There's a more, as I said, there's kind of a more of a time release to this as we were looking at that 25th. The Libra eclipse, there's one more on October the 2nd. And then, you know, there's another Aries eclipse on March the 29th of 2025, which means week before after March 29th and week before and after May 29th of next year will continue this development. So whatever it is that we're heading towards that was so attractive to us by July of last year, July, August of last year. Is it going to be a step-by-step iterative process? Is it going to be a ripping the Band-Aid off and we're moving in that direction? Are we choosing not to move in that direction? Are we choosing to kind of do a both and as opposed to an either or? All of that, you are looking towards this particular time period we're in, the eclipses in Mercury retrograde till the end of April, to give you information so that you can determine and understand what it is that you need to do. And until that time, by all means, consider, I'm looking at, I'm sorry, here's the ugly lighting. And until that time, try to manage resources and try to, in your own way, navigate the next 5 or 6 weeks with a sense of leadership and keeping your own hand on the steering wheel to the best of your ability. Try not to make too many rash decisions unless it feels really clear that the Spirit is advising you to move in a certain direction. Okay? But the first half of this week sees us closing out the full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. The second half of this week sees us going into Mercury retrograde. The entire week potentially sees us in a balanced, productive state. And this entire week and next week are also the weeks between the eclipses. So we expect and already information or news about mortality, or, it's typically around eclipses, as I've said, people, situations eclipsing in, out of our lives. What are we releasing? What are we done with? What are we where it is that we need to stand up for ourselves while we do that? What are we closing out? What are we ushering in? What is Spirit closing out? What is Spirit ushering in? All of that is in the works. We're sort of in the middle of the whirlpool. And it may have felt like that last week as we were heading to the full moon. This week and next week may feel a little bit less like that because it's between the eclipses. Once the April 8th eclipse happens, after that we may start to get that feeling again of this kind of whirlpoolness. But people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart might find April 1st to 25th more decisive. And they might find that they're more in sync with decision-making and cognitive processing while Mercury is retrograde. So if there's something that emerges that was in their blind spot, it might be easier and faster for them to say, okay, this is what this means, and this is where I'm headed, and this is what I'm doing. For the rest of us who have Mercury direct, as I said, we're waiting till May. And in some cases, because as I've said before, the April 8th new moon solar eclipse happens while Mercury is retrograde, we may even find that we're waiting till early June, June 8th, the week before, week after, to see progress and movement in a certain direction that the April 8th eclipse is promising, because we want Mercury to go direct and we want it to gather some momentum. I think when we look at sort of the numerology and the corresponding tarot card for April of 2024, what it corresponds to is the Hanged Man. So there may be, while all the swirl is happening, we are suspended, trying to make sense of which door, as I've said to you before, show up for every opportunity. Because with the eclipses, it is, as I've said before, like you're banging your head against 13 doors, 12 will not open, and the one that is meant for you, your hand will barely touch the knob, it'll open, it'll just pull you in. And so that means that we have to show up for whatever it is that Spirit is bringing to us to the best of our ability. But change is in the air. And with eclipses, sometimes the change can be traumatic and stressful because the Spirit of the universe is in the works to force us in a certain direction. So it can mean financial constriction, things working out or not working out, to force us into a certain direction. Options closing, to push us through to that opening. And it's fair to inquire of ourselves whether that opening really feels like it is leading us into the Aries part of our chart, the house occupied by Aries, where we're meant to lean into where the North Node eclipses are. Is it supporting the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus? The most expansive, forward-looking parts of the chart are the Aries part of the chart and the Taurus part of the chart, where Jupiter and Uranus will conjunct on April the 20th. And that is the conjunction, that is the aspect that is crowning these eclipses. Jupiter ending a 12-13-year cycle, starting a 12-13-year cycle in the Taurus part of the chart, and Uranus asking us to express ourselves and become, in that part of the chart, our authentic individual selves. So, feeling the lunar eclipse and continue to act on it and release what we feel we need to release. Looking back at October 14th, December 14th, January 24th, 25th, March 24th, 25th for the next couple of days. And in the second half of this week, starting to pay attention to and hold on to the chaos and craziness as Mercury goes retrograde and the wires start to get crossed and the phone calls start to get crazy. And, you know, like the Mercury retrograde calls when you're talking to customer service and you can't quite believe you're having the conversation you're having because, you know, as I've said, it's one of those things about, oh my God, you sent me the wrong bolt. And no, I did not send you the wrong bolt. And you're looking at the wrong, it's just like this bizarre miscommunication that once Mercury goes direct, all of a sudden clears up. But in the meantime, you felt like just screaming because how could this be unclear? Or, you know, the equivalent of losing bags and not being able to find them or you know, all that kind of stuff. But the larger meaning, the larger context, the larger purpose of this time is to help us accelerate and move towards greater clarity in the direction that is right for us, corresponding to the Aries and Taurus part of our chart. The Pisces part of the chart continues to, during the month of April, see some important aspects. It sees Venus conjuncting Neptune on April the 3rd. I know that pushes us into next week, but I do think I'm going to have to address that starting Wednesday, Thursday, in a kind of a holistic manner. And then Mars conjuncting Saturn, which is a very important aspect for that April 8th eclipse. And then Mars conjuncting Neptune at the end of April. So the Pisces part of the chart continues to say, stabilize me so that I don't spill over and affect negatively your ability to move towards the Aries and Taurus part of the chart. So the agenda remains constant. Growth in the Aries and Taurus part of the chart, with the Aries part of the chart gaining greater traction, and the Pisces part of the chart requiring our attention so that it can be stabilized. Enjoy the productivity, get things done, get things off your to-do list. Enjoy the balanced energy this week. And enjoy being open to partnering or being in conversation with Spirit, even if Spirit is closing things out for you sometimes in a way that might be stressful because it's just trying to push you in the direction that it feels is right for you. Okay? If you are interested in inquiring about a personal astrological reading with me, my contact information is in the description box below. You can use that, email me, and I can send you the relevant information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you found this video useful, share it, tell your friends about it, comment, like on it, increases circulation. My thanks and my gratitude sincerely to the people who do comment and like on these videos. Welcome to new subscribers. When you subscribe, there's a bell icon next to the subscribe button. Hover over that and there's a wiggly bell on top, or click on it. Click on the wiggly bell so you're notified whenever I do new videos. And then I'm going to see you in another 2 or 3 days' time to talk about, hey, a video under 30 minutes just about. I am going to do another video in 2 or 3 days' time focusing on the sign of Pisces and the house of Pisces, and to give you some context of what's been going on there since 2014, 15, 16, a much requested video as we look to that Venus conjuncting Neptune that's coming up on April the 3rd. Okay? Thank you very much. Take care.